The ancient Greeks called romantic love the madness of the gods. People live for love, they kill for love, they die for love. It's one of the most powerful brain systems on Earth. So many years ago, I decided that I would try to start putting people into a brain scanner and understand what happens in the brain when you fall madly in love. So with my colleagues, Dr. Lucy Brown, Dr. Art Aaron, and Dr. Bianca Acevedo, we have now put over 75 men and women into a brain scanner. 17 were people who had just fallen happily in love, 15 were people who had just been rejected in love, and 15 were people who were reported that they were still in love after an average of 21 years of marriage. I talk a lot about this in other places, so I'll just say a very few things now, and then go on to what I really want to talk about, which is why you fall in love with one person rather than another. Foremost, the things that I've learned, most important perhaps, is that love is a drive. It comes from very primitive parts of the brain, way below the cortex. As a matter of fact, parts of the cortex actually begin to shut down when you fall in love with somebody. You can't notice anymore that they've got 3 heads because you're madly in love. In fact, this brain region that becomes active, the entire brain system that becomes active, is linked with focus, with energy, with craving, and with motivation. And indeed, it is a motivation to find life's most greatest prize, which is a mating partner. Indeed, I think that romantic love is one of 3 basically different drives that evolved from mating and reproduction. I think that the sex drive evolved to get you out there looking for a whole range of partners. I think romantic love evolved to enable you to focus your mating energy on just one at a time. And I think that 3rd brain system of attachment evolved so that you can tolerate this human being at least long enough to raise your children together as a team. And of course, these 3 brain systems operate in many different ways. There's only one new thing that I've discovered very recently that I want to share with you before I go on. And that is about hooking up, having sex with somebody. Indeed, when you have, these 3 brain systems are connected. When you have sex with somebody, you can actually trigger the brain system and trigger feelings of intense romantic love. So recently, with Match.com, the internet dating site, we did the first actually very large national study of singles in America based on the US Census. And one of the questions that I asked in the study is, did you ever go into having a one-night stand with somebody and then find that it turned into a long-term partnership? And indeed, 1/3 of the people who went into a one-night stand ended up in a long-term partnership. It's actually, from a Darwinian perspective, not a bad way to do it. I mean, either you can spend 3 years talking about the guy's college plans, or you can get him into bed tonight and trigger the brain circuitry for romantic love. So I'm not surprised that people do it. I'm just simply saying that casual sex is not casual. Unless you're so drunk that you've forgotten who the person is, something happens in the brain. It's one of the most powerful systems on Earth. So I had written my 4th book on this, and I was between things. And 2 days before Christmas, Match.com gave me a call and asked me to come in after Christmas and talk with them for the day. So I went in the middle of the morning. They said to me, "Why do we fall in love with one person rather than another?" And I said, "I don't know. Nobody knows. Psychologists know that timing's got to be right. We tend to fall in love with people from the same socioeconomic and ethnic background, people of the same degree of intelligence and good looks and education, people with the same social and economic and religious values, the same social goals. Your childhood definitely plays a role. But you can walk into a room, and everybody is from your background and same general level of intelligence and education, and you don't fall in love with all of them." So they invited me to start a new dating site with them called Chemistry.com. And at the time I said, I don't know if you got the right person. I mean, I study why we're all alike, and you want to know why we're all different. So they said to go home, think about it, and see if I wanted to do this with them. So anyway, I went home, and it began to think, okay, there's 2 basic parts of personality. There's your character, which is everything you grew up to believe and do and say and think. And there's your temperament, all of those traits that come out of your biology. Now, I do know from epigenetic, tremendous new field of epigenetics, that these are never torn apart. Bottom line is, though, at least 50% of who you are originates from various biological processes. So I decided I would go through all of the academic literature. It took me a couple years to see what traits are linked with what brain systems. And indeed, after doing that, I began to see, there's a lot of brain systems, but they're not all linked with personality traits. Some of them just keep the heart beating or the eyes blinking. Only 4 brain systems seem to be regularly linked, each one of them with a constellation of personality traits. So I had these 4 sheets of paper, the dopamine system, the serotonin system, the testosterone system, and the estrogen and oxytocin system in front of me. And I thought to myself, maybe I could create a questionnaire to see the degree to which you express each one of these categories of personality traits, and then put them on this dating site, and then watch who's naturally drawn to whom. People will say, well, we had chemistry, or we didn't have chemistry. And I thought, maybe there's something to that. So I created the questionnaire and began to watch who's drawn to whom. So what I really want to talk to you about today, and thank you for inviting me, is what I found. 10 million people have now taken this questionnaire in 40 countries. 30,000 people take it every week. So I can continually ask questions about why you fall in love with the people that you do. So first I'm going to go through the 4 broad, very styles of thinking and behaving, and then go on to what I think some of this means. But first of all, we are all a combination of all 4 of these things. These are not cubby holes, they're not types, they're brain systems. And of course, each one of them, we're going to express each one of them to some extent. But in fact, I just looked at 100,000 people on chemistry.com, and no 2 people took that questionnaire the same way. I'm an identical twin. Even my twin sister and I are not exactly alike. But there's patterns to nature, and there's patterns to personality. And over again, I saw these 4 cornerstones of personality expressed in these various people. So I'm now actually working on the genetics of this with a geneticist from Princeton University, Dr. Lee Silver. And in fact, the first academic articles we're going to do on this are going to be in math journals, because he's hooked on the math of these patterns and the different kinds of patterns. There's no case in which it's not random. Personality is not random. It does fall into, in fact, we found 25 very dramatic patterns of thinking and behaving. So these are the 4 cornerstones of it. I'm going to whiz through them. By the way, I have to, because I was working with a dating site, I had to name these people. So I called people who are very expressive of aspects of the dopamine and norepinephrine system. Explorers, not a great term, I'm stuck with it now. Anyways, these are some of the characteristics of this kind of person. They're novelty-seeking, risk-taking, very curious. The academic term is sensation seekers. Energetic, restless, exploring, physical exploration or mental. It's not just people who jump off cliffs. It's people who can sit in a room like this and listen all afternoon and collect a lot of interesting ideas and then talk about it. Enthusiasm, optimism are both in the dopamine system. As a matter of fact, right after Obama was elected president, you may have seen the headline of the humor magazine, The Onion, said, "Black man given worst job in the world." And indeed, he was optimistic about it. I doubt he's so optimistic about it today, but independent and self-reliant seems to be in the dopamine system. Impulsive, spontaneously generous, mentally flexible, open-minded, and one of the most characteristic traits in the dopamine system is what they call idea generation and creativity. These people are very creative. As a matter of fact, if you give L-Dopa to a Parkinson's patient, very often their creativity goes way up. They'll turn into very good poets, very good painters, also addicts. Addiction is in the dopamine system. On the downside of this, there's a dark side of every moon. They can be susceptible to boredom, reckless, unreflective. I'm very much of the explorer type, as I would expect most of you are also. And most of these people don't really care who they are. They look out. not in. And as a matter of fact, I was making a speech to a group of therapists, about 600 therapists in California some time ago, and I heard myself say, well, you know, I don't really care who I am. And somebody from the back of the room shouted, you want to talk about it? I didn't really. They tend to be manic, they can be insincere, opportunistic, and very unpredictable. I did a study of 178,000 people. It's called the Lexical Hypothesis. It comes out of the 1930s. People do use words that express who they are. I wanted to know if there was biology to that word usage. So I looked at 178,000 people. These are the top 10 words that the people who are very expressive of the dopamine system use. Adventure, new, fun, travel, outgoing, passion, and active. All due to these chemical systems. A perfect example is Richard Branson. I have always thought the rules were made to be broken. I would imagine a lot of people in this room think so too. I follow the rules of the road, don't want to die, but bottom line is I don't follow the rule just to follow the rule. Another different type of explorer. We're not measuring intelligence, we're measuring temperament. I'm sure she's extremely bright, but a different sort of bright than probably Richard Branson. She's got a tattoo of a window on her arm. Let me out. Only the explorer, I think, would do that. They tend to live in the big cities. Certainly Chicago is among them. Yellow is the color I chose for all of the explorers. They're not in Dallas and Houston. They're not in Phoenix. They're not in Las Vegas, but they're in most of the big cities where the action is. Those who I call the builders, they're expressive of the serotonin system in the brain. They tend to be, they conform, they follow social rules. They like familiarity. They're harm avoidant, self-controlled. Being in control is very important to them, frugal. They tend to be managerial. They follow plans and routines and schedules. They're orderly. I've got a friend who annually, he and his wife go off to I think it's some sort of money manager, and they were sitting at their table together and with the money manager, and he just by chance leaned over on the desk and moved the guy's pencil sharpener, and the guy immediately moved it back. And now every single year he goes and he does that, and every year he moves it back. They're fact-oriented, have more close friends. They're calmer, is why you take something like Prozac or Paxil. They tend to be more religious. They're interested in loyalty. We all want one of my favorite questions on the questionnaire is, do you want to have loyal friends or interesting friends? Well, we all want loyal friends and we all want interesting friends, but they have got to have loyal friends. Loyalty is very important to them. On the downside, they tend to be closed-minded, controlling, rigid, stubborn, and moralistic. Top word they use is family. We also have trust, loyal, respect, loving, values. Word values is very important to them. Ben Bernanke, I think, is a very good example of one. I think George Washington, I've gotten very interested in history. He was the right man in the right time in American history. I think it was very expressive of the serotonin system in the brain. Testosterone system, these people are analytical, logical, they've got very good spatial skills. They're very good at music, which is actually a spatial task. I think Beethoven was very much of this type. Experimental, exacting, rank-oriented, emotionally contained. You know, I made a speech at Davos, and I saw that they're moving two things at Davos. They're moving their thumbs on their BlackBerries, and they're moving their mouth. That's about it. They're very self-controlled, high testosterone type. Decisive, bold, and direct. These are the ones that say, get to the point. On the downside, they can be uncompromising, impatient, demanding. Mind blindness is an academic term, the inability to climb into somebody's head and see what's going on. Less empathetic and aloof. Intelligence is one of their top words. There are lots of different kinds of intelligence, but it's very important to them. Politics-driven, challenge. Larry Ellison is a good example. Hillary Clinton, I think, is another very good example. When asked why she was attracted to Bill, she said, he wasn't afraid of me. Last type, very broad style of thinking and behaving. These are the big picture seers, expressive of estrogen and oxytocin. Very imaginative. It's actually because of the way the estrogen affects the brain in the womb. People skills, social skills, very intuitive, able to climb into your head. Empathetic, what we call pro-social. Introspective. These are the ones that care who they are and who you are on a very genuine level. Seek harmony, stab you in the back, never hit you in the face. Emotionally expressive, and diplomatic intelligence. On the downside, they're scattered, they're indecisive. They'll say, well, where do you want to go for dinner? Well, we go here, we go there, we go. Well, make up your mind. I'm making my mind. They're going through all of the alternatives while they do it. Placating, ruminating, gullible, hypersensitive, backstabbing, unforgiving, effusive. Now, we don't have all of these traits, of course, but these are the traits that have been linked with the estrogen system. Top word they use is passion, random. They like the word random. No good high testosterone likes the word random, nor does any good serotonin type. I think Bill Clinton actually may have been our first female president. Whole world knows he can't stop talking. Highly emotionally expressive. He was the one that cried at his daughter's wedding. His wife didn't cry, he did. And of course, he's well known for saying, I feel your pain. Charles Darwin, the grandest synthesizing mind, I think, that's ever come into this planet. I've got, of course, 10 million of these things, so I got everybody's zip code. All of the conventional, traditional high serotonin types are in the Midwest and the South. High testosterone is all around Washington, where they're trying to run the world, or out in Las Vegas, where all the spatial skills of gambling, or in Alaska, where they're shooting the animals. They're all spatial skills. Everything that's loose rolls into California. That's a high dopamine type. And of course, the tree hugger green, I call that, for the very liberal, high estrogen, touchy-feely, big reading type of person. So, as it turns out, the high dopamine type goes for people like themselves, people who are energetic, curious, and creative, want people like themselves. And so do those expressive of serotonin. They also want somebody like themselves. Traditional wants traditional, but opposites attract when it comes to the high estrogen and the high testosterone. So we're now studying our genetics of this. We need some funding down the road, but we've isolated 63 genes. We want to begin to understand these patterns of personality. I've also done, with Lucy Brown and Bianca Acevedo, put 34 people into the brain scanner and beginning to find some of the brain circuitry of these cornerstones of personality. So I will just close with two things. Number one, I think that that these four broad styles of thinking and behaving evolved. We've for millions of years lived in little hunting and gathering bands. There were maybe about 25 individuals to a group. 10 or 12 were children. That left 10 or 12 grown-ups. You got them all walking over the hill, and suddenly you see a pile of mushrooms. Well, you can't have 12 explorers saying, oh, let's try the mushrooms. You need some builder, serotonin types, who say, we've never tried the mushrooms. It's not in our tradition. You need some high testosterone type who are experimental and say, well, let's feed them to the dog and see what happens. Not my dog, but some dog. And we need some high estrogen types who are going to say, let's sit down and talk about these mushrooms. In other words, I'm a group selectionist. I think that these broad styles of thinking and behaving evolve together. And I think that hopefully they can be very useful in understanding business, putting together corporate boards, hiring, advertising, selling, reaching people where they live. As a matter of fact, my editor, when he first read a rough draft of the book, he called me up, and there was a long pause, and then he said, Helen, I finally understand my son. And indeed, I think that we can. So now I want to really close with a story. Match.com came to me one day and said, would your questionnaire work in other countries? And I said, if it doesn't, I have failed. Because I'm not studying the American mind, I'm studying the human mind. I'm studying human nature. So it's then went into a lot of other countries, and it's worked out. So anyway, we went to Japan and to launch a site in Japan, and the week went by. I talked to a lot of journalists, et cetera. And then came the final night. And on the final night, I showed up at this huge wedding palace. I mean, a giant thing, white, looked like the White House, with mannequins with wedding dresses and balloons and flowers, et cetera. So I was sitting in the green room, and I said, well, what am I supposed to do tonight? They said, well, we're going to have everybody take your questionnaire and then put a band around their hands so that we know whether they tend to be expressive of dopamine, serotonin, testosterone, or estrogen. And what you're going to do is we're going to wheel out 2-foot wide bottom of wedding cakes. And all of the explorers are going to decorate one wedding cake, and all the negotiators another, et cetera, et cetera. And you are going to judge the wedding cakes. And I said, oh, yeah, the nadir of my scientific experience. What do I know about wedding cakes? So anyway, they came along, and there were at least 400 people in the room. They were all wheeled out. The cakes were wheeled out, and there was all this commotion, and there was all the decorating, and all the negotiators were here, and the builders there, and the explorers here, and the directors there. So my moment came, and I had to go over to the first wedding cake and judge it. So I go over this wedding cake, and the crowd parts. I couldn't see it. And this was the Negotiator Cake, the high estrogen cake. The cake was smiling at me. It was trying to like me. It even wrote love on the wedding cake. So then I go over to the builder cake. These people are formal by nature, traditional. And sure enough, this was it's a nice cake. It's probably the kind of cake that most people have. It's formal, it's lush. We got one kiwi, one cherry, one kiwi, one cherry, one kiwi, one cherry. It's an orderly cake. So then I go over to the director's cake, the high testosterone cake. And the crowd parts, and I take a look at this cake. There is no emotion in that cake. It is the most contained cake I've ever seen. But these people are inventive, and they decorated around the cake. So then I go over to the explorer cake. And the crowd parts, and the first thing I see is 3 men hurling fruit at the cake. They take one look at me, and one of them, a fourth one, grabs a bunch of flowers in a vase having nothing to do with the decoration for this cake and plunged it in the middle of that cake. How's the cake? Thank you very much.